Hey, welcome to my channel where I talk about my dolls, and that's literally it. And in this video, I'm going to be redressing some of my American Girl dolls for Diwali, which I'll then put up in my window display, and I'll share that similarly to what I did when I redressed my dolls for Halloween. Those dolls which are now behind me because this year in the Gregorian calendar, the Diwali overlaps with Halloween because they go by the Hindu calendar. I hope that's obvious. And now because my partner is Hindu, I'm full of stories in which I embarrass myself when I go to temple with him, and I'm going to share as many of those as I possibly can while I redress my dolls. As cringy as they are, I think there's a little bit of education and maybe entertainment in there while I'm explaining everything that I've been learning over the last 4 years. I'm going to start with Deepika. This is limited edition Jasmine, but I bought her to be a different doll in my collection. And I'm going to put her in the Diwali outfit, what American Girl calls the Diwali outfit, which is a lehenga choli with a scarf, chunari, I think it's called. Again, these are things I'm still kind of learning as I'm going, dating my partners from India, as I've said many times on my channel, but I've never really talked about going to temple with him and kind of the things I had to learn, because I'm not a religious person, meaning my family didn't raise me with any religion, and I've been around religious people and other religions my whole life, but I don't have a lot of knowledge about other religions just because I wasn't raised with any. It's so my partner and I, we started dating 4 years ago, and I happen to live within a walking distance of a Hindu temple. So, it wasn't too long after we started dating that we started going there. And this was early to mid 2021, which means a lot of things were very shut down or very quiet over COVID, all the social distancing that was going on. So when we first started going, it was actually really easy because we would go to the temple and there wouldn't really be anyone there. There would be maybe a few like aunties, that's the respectful term that Indians have for ladies of a certain age, who would be sitting there at these chairs along the back wall at the temple that we go to, the one that's near me. And so the most I would ever deal with while he was praying is I would walk around and kind of read up there all these paintings with descriptions of what's going on in the picture. I would kind of use that to educate myself while he was doing his praying thing. And as things started opening up again and more people started coming to temple, we now masked up, just so you know, like in these stories, I'm going to be wearing a mask because you had to at this time, which means I wasn't able to hear speech very properly. And, I was in this new environment, and it's a Krishna temple, Hare Krishna temple. And I remember one of the first embarrassing things that I went through was as people started showing up and we were walking around and, nodding at each other, prayer hands, whatever. And people would say to me, Hare Krishna, through a mask, keep that in mind. And I, with my English-speaking ears, was hearing what sounded similar to Merry Christmas. Please don't hate me for this. And oh, one thing I want to mention, when you're not religious versus somebody who is religious people don't explain to you what to expect or what to do or what decorum you should follow when you're going into these buildings that they've gone into their whole lives. So I didn't know anything to expect, for the record. So I would respond every time they would say to me, Hare Krishna, I would say, Merry Krishna, thinking they were saying like Happy Krishna. Honestly, I don't know. I didn't know what I was saying. And so I don't know how many times I said that to people. And I didn't even think to look at the expression on their face, because I just thought that's what I heard and I was saying that right. And then one day my partner he was like, oh, are people wishing you Hare Krishna? I was like, no, they're wishing me Merry Krishna. He's like, what? I'm like, they're saying Merry Krishna. He's like, no, Blaine, they're saying Hare Krishna. That's the name of the temple. And I was so embarrassed. And he told me not to worry, that it probably wasn't anything that they would even notice. But I don't know. I didn't know to look at their faces at the time. And so that was a really quick lesson in my boyfriend, because we weren't that serious yet. It's not going to teach me anything. And sorry, I'm just putting her bracelets on her ankles, but they don't look right. They're too small. They're too big for her ankles, so I'm going to put them back on her wrists. And I'm about to give her, oh, maybe it's just small for every, oh, did they just stretch? Oh, her ankles stretched them out. This beast. Okay, let me take this off her. So the other thing, because I'm about to give her the first lesson, in this outfit comes with this diya, which looks very impressive. It looks like it's a nice metal diya, but it's plastic and it's very light, very shiny. It looks nice. But when I bought it, I thought it was metal. So what I was trying to say about this was one of the things my partner had trouble teaching me was how to say diya. That because in the Hindi language, the Hindi alphabet, there are three. When you write the Hindi language in English, there are three sounds, three versions of D. So the way I now know them, because it took him like 2 years to get it through my head, is there's the, which is what I call tongue out. So the, there's the, which is tongue up, and then there is r, which is tongue rolled. And so this is pronounced dia. And I would always say dia, you know, like if it was pronounced in English. So I think it was 2 years, it literally took him 2 years to wrap my head around the different pronunciations of what we in English would call D sounds. And, oh, I took a bracelet off. So the story I wanted to tell, the embarrassing story about a diya, is when people started showing up, oh, and also, I forgot to tell you that it goes in between your fingers, that's how she holds it. When people started coming to the temple more, like as things started opening up and more people were just coming around, masks were coming off, everything like that, there are a lot of, how do I say this? There are a lot of things that people do when they go to temple. It's every day, and it's, you know, the temples are open from a certain time. And by temple, I mean there's this, I would call it a display, it's probably a really rude way to put it, in the back where there are life-size idols of religious figures, of gods. And there will be like a priestess or a priest doing some of the ceremonies, the daily ceremonies going on up there. And one of the things that happens is the priestess, or it's usually a priestess when I was there, would take the diya. She would, I offer it to the gods. I may be saying some of this wrong, and I'm so sorry if any Indian people happen to be watching this, or Hindu people, or Hindi-speaking people. I apologize. And then the next step is they would give it to someone, from what I observed. And again, my partner doesn't explain anything to me. It's just kind of what I see from watching and learning and going along with it. So she would call someone up after she's, you know, presented it to the gods, the idols. And then that person would take it around to everyone, and they would kind of, you know, rub their hands over the flame, put it through their hair, put it through their face, bless themselves, I think, is what my partner has said to me. And so when that started happening, when enough people started showing up to the temple, I didn't want to invade on anyone's rituals or ceremonies or their beliefs, because I'm not Hindu and I don't know how disrespectful that would be. But obviously I was there to support my partner. He's very spiritual. I've not really talked about that on here before, but he is. And so the first time that happened, I went and I like kind of hid in the back. There's, like, as I had mentioned, there are those chairs along the back wall when you first walk in. And I would go there and I would try to hide, like, oh, get out of the way, don't be some like interloper. And one of the very first times that I went there and did that, the guy who was going around and, you know, presenting the diya to everyone, he had, you know, given it to everyone who was where they were supposed to be in the temple. And then he saw me, and I was like, oh no, instead of hiding over here, I'm making this poor guy come running over with his diya. And so I was thankful that I had kind of watched what everyone had done, because again, my partner didn't tell me anything. And so when he gets over to me, he presents the diya, and I do the thing. I'm like, okay, I think this is what everyone was doing. And then when he was done, I don't know, Indians are very welcome. I'm very proud of their culture. That's the only way I can explain it. So when I did that, he was like, thank you. And so the only word, one of the very few words I had learned at that point in Hindi was, so I just went, dhanyavad, which is probably a brutal way of saying thank you, a butchering way of saying it. But I was so embarrassed and I felt so bad. So from then on, whenever the diya would come out, I wouldn't go hide in the back of the temple anymore. And I've already told more stories than I thought I would, just only dressing one doll. So let me move on to Kavi. She's wearing for Diwali, she wears her Bollywood costume. And one thing I didn't say in the beginning is, when I'm going to put their shoes on them for the sake of dressing them for the video, but they don't wear it when they're up in the display, because I like to think of the display as a temple. And that was something I already knew, that when you go into a temple, you take off your shoes, because I've been to Indian weddings and stuff. So I already knew that going into it. But so that's just later on when you see them, there's going to be a little, what I like fake as a cubby hole, just a little riser, because when you go in, you take off your shoes. There's I think every temple I've been to, and we've been to a lot because, as I said, he spiritually likes to he likes to drive around on weekends to different ones when we have the availability. And there's always like a cubby hole, meaning it's like a shelf with little square cubbies. I think that's what everyone would call them. I don't know if that's a regional thing, so I hope that's not confusing. And so going off more what I was saying about how we like to go to different temples, or he likes to go to different temples, is we have kind of driven, and I've talked about this before, he lives very far away from me. It's about 90 kilometers, maybe it's more like 100. So it's about 40 to 50 miles away. So there are a lot of temples to cover within that space. And sorry, going back to the one where I live, where I've embarrassed myself numerous times. There's something called, I don't know if I'm saying this right, but prasad. So that is an offering to God, which is usually, and it's me being embarrassing again and having no decorum. People will make sweets, they'll bring fruit and they offer it to God. And then after, so what I said, similar to what I said about the diya, after it's presented to the gods, if I'm saying this correctly, and again, if I'm single next week, you know why. I said it all wrong. Oh, I didn't give her trinity. So after they present it to the gods, the priestess, because in most of my experiences, it's been a female, will call everyone up to the temple where she is, and she'll hand everyone usually a little sweet, like a baked good. Usually it's some kind of barfi, which is what it's called, or anyway, I'm not going to go into any more words that I will probably not say correctly. And the first time, again, having to adjust to everyone being in this space now where I was used to being there alone for the first, must have been a good 6 months that I was eased into it by there being nobody in there because of COVID. And so one time I did my same thing where I was like, oh, okay, this isn't just somebody bringing around the diya. This is people going up to take an offering to God. I really don't want to invade on that custom. So I did the same thing. I went and sat and thought I was hiding in the chair. And after everyone has gone up, so everyone has gotten the prasad, and I'm this one non-Hindu sitting hiding in the back, and I made the mistake of locking eyes with the priestess. And so she goes, and now, instead of just sticking with my partner and going up and following out to get the prasad, I now had to walk up there all by myself with everybody watching this interloper come in and take their prasad. But again, I have to say, that's not the feeling behind. Indians definitely don't feel that way about visitors, because anytime we go to a temple, there will be somebody who works there, whether it's a priest or just somebody who works for the temple itself, a volunteer or whatever. They'll always say to my partner, they'll look at me and then they'll say in Hindi, and then he'll tell me later, they'll say, if we're taking prasad or some kind of treat or any kind of, because they also have a feast. So if you go there, you would eat and you would sit with everyone, and they would all eat kind of together. And they would always say, let him serve him first because he's the guest. Except in the beginning, he would always say that the word they used was outsider, which is what I already felt like. And so that's the one thing. Any experience I've had with Indians throughout my whole life, because it's not like my partner is the first Indian I've ever known. It's just he's the one I'm in a relationship with. They've always been so welcoming and really excited about their culture, because there is so much culture in India. And that's why me, as a Canadian, and I grew up in a city that's very multicultural, so I feel like I know little bits and pieces of different cultures. But when you're in a relationship with somebody, so you have a different level of a connection with them, you realize, oh, I don't know anything about culture. And so a lot of being with him has been learning about his culture, that because I've had friends, close friends even, like really close friends who are Indian, they've kind of primed me. But I used to always say to them as a joke, like, oh, there's too much to fit in my my Canadian brain. There's no way I'm going to be able to absorb all this. But luckily they tried back before I met my partner. Okay, so I'm going to keep talking, obviously, but I would want to explain this next doll. So this is a customized 75, 76. The thing, okay, so he's the medium skin tone Sonali mold boy, the first one they did, And I have customized him with 75 or, okay, so I know one is 75 and one's 76, and now I'm having them mixed up. I think he's 76 and the wig is 75. So the first Jess Mold Boy doll had blacker hair. And this character, I call him Rohan. He is not, that's my partner's name's not Rohan. My partner's, well, I don't need to say his name, but if I talk about him, his fake name is going to go, I'm going to call him Shu, which is shade because it's the only syllable of his name some of my family can pronounce to this day. So if I ever say Shu, that's my partner's name. So anyway, he is Rohan, but he is my partner's mini-me in the sense that, you know, his role in my collection, he kind of, you know, there's the Logan doll who's the mini-me sits with him and they're like best friends because they're kids. They don't need to like, they're still young. So that's why I'm saying that. So because my partner has true black hair, I got another of the 76 doll so that I could give him the 75 wig. I think I'm saying that correctly, either that or backward. And I was originally just going to do it to my original 76, but people said that he's really rare, so maybe try to get a replacement. And then I did, and I was going to customize the replacement, but these boy wigs are really hard to remove. So I was able to remove my original Rohan, my original 76, and I gave him the darker brown eyes because when comparing them to my partner, his are a bit more like this. So that was a really long story before I even get into telling any stories. And because there have been no official boy Indian clothes by American Girl, I bought this off of Etsy last year from Sequin Dolls, and she's also on Instagram at the same thing. I'll put a link to her store in the description box because she makes really beautiful Indian, what Indians call ethnic wear, and I know that sounds weird coming out of my mouth, but my partner says that's what it's called. So like more traditional Indian clothes. She makes really great ones for boys and girls, really elaborate ones for girls though. So the prices reflect how elaborate they are. The boy clothes, the boy outfits are $75 US. And I got this one because orange is my favorite color. And this was my favorite of the boy clothes that were offered last year. And for anybody who's curious, I'm in Canada and I often talk about how buying from American Girl is really great because you pay the tax and then you don't have to worry about customs fees. So an example, when I bought this, it's called kurta pajama with my Canadian accent thrown in. When I bought that last year, $75 US plus shipping, and then you don't pay the taxes up front. So then what happens is if you get dinged, because you don't always have to pay customs when something comes through that way. But I know on this particular one, it was $27 in customs because what they do is they convert the $75, they convert it to US, and then they tax that by your province's tax amount, which for me is 13%. And then they throw in a handling fee on top of it, which is another $10. So getting dinged for taxes or any kind of customs, it's even worse if it comes through FedEx or something, FedEx, UPS, because they charge brokerage fees on top of handling fees. So it can be really ridiculous. If somebody's shipping through UPS or FedEx to Canada without charging it up front, the tax, I won't bother because it's just not worth it. And so, yeah, she makes, as I said, it's a small business. So it's, good to promote small business, they say. No, but it is. And so, she makes authentic clothes, and that's great for this time of year. And the reason I have a kurta pajama, but mine's very fancy. It's for a wedding. It's so fancy that when I bought it, it had rhinestones, plastic rhinestones, and I removed them and replaced them with Swarovski crystals because extra. And I haven't seen him, sorry, I'm staring at him. I haven't, I should put his shoes on for the sake of the video. I haven't seen what I call the new and improved Rohan in this kurta pajama yet because I haven't, last year he was just the regular Truly Me 76. And I just want to get his scarf on him. I don't know I think it has a different name I know Chunari, sorry, a lot of this, that's another thing. I love Indian music, and a lot of times I learn how to say things through listening to Indian music. And then it turns out most of the songs, they throw in all these extra syllables to make them more melodic, I guess, or to make them hit the rhythm better. And then that turns out that's not how they're said. So I don't know if I'm saying Trinity right, because there's a song that literally says Pinkateri Trinity, Trinity, Trinity. And that means your pink scarf. So here's Rohan, my partner's mini-me, all fancy for Diwali. And again, when he goes to the temple, which is my window display, he won't have these shoes on. And this isn't really an embarrassing story, but last year, so the last doll I have to dress up on the table is Truly Me 113. And what I did was, because she comes with one of those colorful wigs, but she's such a beautiful doll. She just looks a little cartoony with the wig she comes with. So I gave her a Truly Me 80 wig, which is, you know, the long, dark, textured hair. So her name in my collection is Darshini. So that's I believe that's the tongue out D, like Darshini. And I don't know if I gave examples before. Oh, anyway, what I wanted to say was when I was at temple last year around Diwali with my partner, I happened to look over and see this little girl who was wearing an outfit that I was just like, wow, I can make that outfit with, she's wearing Kavi's yoga outfit. And then I'm going to put Julie's calico dress over it. And it's going to turn into an outfit, like an exact replica of an outfit this little girl was wearing beside me at temple. Which, I mean, I'm not going there to like look at little kids' clothes to dress my dolls, but it was just, I happened to notice, and it was around the time I was about to start. It was between Halloween and Diwali. And I don't know so I was like, oh, that's perfect. Now I know exactly how I'm going to dress her name wasn't Darshini back then, but now she's Darshini. So I'm not going to dead name her. And yeah, aside from the bell sleeves, this is exactly how that little girl looked. It's so funny. Even the same colors. And so I was really thrilled to see that. But I don't even think I told my partner, like, oh, I know exactly how I'm going to dress one of my dolls now. And I think there was another story I wanted to tell before I move on to another point in the redressing, because what happened last year when I put up all these dolls in the window, my partner thought it was weird that I didn't put up a white doll to represent me. And so I thought, okay, that's fine. Next year will think of how to work Logan, because as I said earlier in the video, Logan is my mini-me, but he's not, I don't name him me, he's still Logan, but he would like represent me because he looks a lot like I did when I was a kid. And I recently, as I customized him to look a little bit more like my partner, I gave my Logan doll the Rapunzel eyes, which are gray blue, more like my eye color. And he had those bad gray eyes that were looking down, and now I've fixed that. But before I get to showing you, I don't want to bring him up to the camera when he's just here in underwear. It's kind of weird because, you know, these dolls are like kids. I realized I had to buy him an outfit because I want them to look like they're fancy. They're dressed up for Diwali. I didn't just want to put them in their jeans and t-shirt. Although when I go to temple, for the record, I am wearing jeans and t-shirt. So is my partner. It's an everyday thing. But for Diwali, it's going to be a little bit fancier. So that's why I wanted him to look like he's going to be part of the display. But I must reiterate, just because it's Diwali doesn't mean I'm going to go to temple wearing a kurta pajama and a vest like this. But it's really nice. And it's from Sequin Dolls. I'm looking at the thank you card she sent me down here. She handwrites a thank you letter when you buy her stuff, which is very nice. And that's how I remember how much the customs were, because this arrived, what day is this? It's Tuesday when I'm recording. I picked this up yesterday. I was really nervous that this wasn't going to show up in time for the video, and I thought, no big deal. I just won't tell this part of the story where my partner suggested I put a doll for me to represent me in the display. And as I mentioned, okay, so here's another, I guess, the funny story I should tell. I don't know if it's funny, and I don't want it to sound disrespectful in any way. One of the stories, so as I mentioned, he likes to go around to different temples. And so his birthday of this year, he wanted to go to a temple that's quite a distance. It's not the distance between where we live, so we would have to take a special trip there, but it was his birthday. So that's how he wanted to celebrate. So we went to this really big temple that's a bit of a tourist attraction in the sense that it's huge, it's beautiful. They spent a lot of money building it. It's got a museum inside it, a museum about Indian and Hindu history. And when we went there, this was back in late May. So that's how, to give you a little bit of a time frame. And we went into the museum and it was empty because, most people are going there to pray. And we were there I guess we were there at a time that, because as I don't know if I made it clear earlier, that the temples where you pray, like the actual temples that open and close when you're inside, the displays where the idols are, those are only open at certain times. So I think when we went to the museum, it was just at a time that everybody was there for praying. So it was just the two of us walking around this museum, and a guy who worked there, kept saying to my partner, "Oh, do you have any questions? Does your friend have any questions?" And, my Shu would just be like, "No, no, we're good, we're good." And so he kept walking by and going, "Are you sure your friend doesn't have any questions?" Like, he really wanted me to ask questions. And this is going to go a little bit back to what I was saying about Indians always being very excited about their culture and very inviting. And so eventually I had a question. And Shu was like, "Okay, go ask him." So I asked him, and he got really excited. And I'm saying this with like love and appreciation. But I know that sounds like I'm now not going to be appreciative. But it's just that I didn't expect for him to stay with me for 2 hours, telling me he took me to every exhibit you could say and just gave me so much information. And as I was trying to say earlier, that my partner for 4 years has been trying to fill my head with all this information too. And I'm a slow learner, but like once I have it, I think I have it forever. But sometimes, for an example, my partner will be like, "I have told you that 100 times. And I'm like, "Well, you have 6 more to go and then I'll have it." And so this was what so this is my mini-me, Logan, dressed up for Diwali with his best friend, Rohan, over here. And I hope this isn't disrespectful, but because of the colors, I think that this is going to become Rohan's Christmas kurta. And I'm sorry if I'm saying that so exaggeratedly. I'm going to move him over here just because I have a couple more things to show after I finish this story off. But anyway, so he was giving me the lowdown on everything. And he is somebody who had moved to Canada when he was about 10 years old. So I can imagine, because I grew up here and I know how certain people were treated of certain backgrounds, let's say. So I imagine he didn't have a great time growing up here in Canada. So I just felt like because I was Canadian, he was really enjoying that. Sorry. Okay, let me take one little break just to show you that I changed Logan's eyes. So now he's got the gray, blue Rapunzel eyes. That's all. What a weird interruption. But I just looked over at him on the monitor. And so I think because, he had such negative experiences, I would assume, growing up with, locals, because people can be like that wherever you move, right? Especially when you're new and you don't always speak the language and you have a different accent from the people who live there. And so he needed my attention so bad that if my partner asked him a question, he would respond looking at me. And I would just be kind of looking back and forth between him like, I'm not catching any of this because I don't know enough. I don't have enough of the base to understand all these intricate details you're giving me. And if I would ever try to like look at an exhibit and, not wander off, but, politely get out of the conversation, he would hit me in the chest, be like, "And here's what I was saying about this." And it went beyond just telling me about all the history, which I was happy to listen because, as I said, my partner's he's very spiritual and he loves the history of his country. So I was just, going along for the ride. It's his birthday. I'm like, "You're going to be really glad I'm such a good boyfriend right now for listening to all this." And then, because at one point, the man who worked there, I wouldn't know what his role would be, curator maybe, he said to my partner, "Oh, is this just your coworker or is he actually your friend?" I don't know where the coworker came into it. Maybe he sees a lot of coworkers come in. So my partner, instead of saying, "No, that's my partner," said, "No, we're friends too." And all I could think was, as this man is talking, I'm like, Shu, if you had just said I was your partner in the beginning, he probably would have left us alone. But now he thinks he's like, he's got like a new friend. Anyway, so after he's taking me through the entire museum, and we're stopping at every exhibit for at least 10 minutes while he's giving me all this information, kind of like how I'm not boring you with the story, but like now I'm giving you all this information right now. And then when we got outside the museum, he kind of had me and my partner, Shu, behind this sort of like velvet rope. So everybody's walking by and like being like, "Oh, I wonder who they are, why they're, back there, and, they're in this like special place." And I was so embarrassed. At this point, I was so embarrassed because people were constantly walking by like, "Who is that? who's this curator talking to? I'm assuming curator. I really don't know. And then he brings us into this other room where there's a priest and there's another idol. It's it's like a gold statue and there's water going down it. And everybody's lining up to do whatever the ceremony is that I wouldn't understand because I'm not Hindu. And he takes me and my partner, cuts us right to the front of the line, so bypasses everyone, and he's like, here's what you do, you touch the head and you do all this stuff to the statue. And now everybody's really like, oh, I wonder who this is that he's, he bypassed the line, and I'm so embarrassed. But I'm trying to be respectful and trying to be like really appreciative. And again, it's my partner's birthday. So I'm thinking, this is kind of like a cool thing that we get to do for your birthday. And then after he cuts us, there's another line where everybody's lining up. The story's leading somewhere to this bracelet I've been wearing for the last, I don't know, since May, end of May. What is that, 6 months? No, 5 months, 4 maybe. So then he bypasses another line where there's this priest doing another ceremony. And then he gives you this, what's called a raksha. I knew I was going to say it backward because there's a public transit thing called rickshaw in India, but it's a raksha, which is Hindi for protection. So we get to the end, and again, the same guy, we see the priest who's doing some other ceremony, and then he ties this on my wrist and says it's protection. If it's like a scene that's sort of like what do you call it? What did he call it? Like an insurance policy. If something happens to me, at least this is to protect me. I believe maybe because Hindus believe in reincarnation. Not that my beliefs matter, but I believe in reincarnation too. Regardless, I've just always felt that way as a kid. Like I was always here before. Is that just like ego? I don't know. But I was a kid and nobody taught me that. So anyway, I have been wearing this ever since because it's like out of respect for my partner's religion, and because we no longer live together because he had to move closer to his office. When a couple weeks later passed and he saw that I was wearing it, he was so thrilled. And one thing I learned from dating him was anytime I embraced his culture, he got really excited. And, one thing I keep in mind, I haven't even been dressing dolls or anything, but one thing I've been I notice and keep in mind is he moved here alone without his family. His family's all back in India. He has friends here and stuff, but, it's like to have his partner who's not part of his culture, and probably, he's never said this and treated me this way, but probably feels a little alienating to have me embrace his culture. I feel like it's something that has created a really strong bond between us. And this is a little bit off topic of Hinduism, and even though I haven't even talked about Diwali very much, I've talked about so much other stuff. Even though this isn't about Hinduism, when we first met, because I mentioned briefly that I've actually always loved Indian music, and there's a lot more to it than just, my partner being Indian. But in the beginning, when we started dating, he would play some Indian songs for me because I like songs of different, because I live in a multicultural city. I do like music from around the world. So he was kind of not exposing me because I've been exposed to Indian music, but showing me some songs he thought I would like. And one song that really stuck out to me back then, like I said, around 2021, was the song called "Men Tera Boyfriend." And I liked it so much. It had this almost like Western meets Indian vibe to it. And I didn't know any Hindi at the time, like not a single word. And so I was like, I'm going to learn this song. I really like it. And I wonder how much it'll impress him. And so that's one of the things I did. I remember was I would like concentrate really hard and sit down, look at the lyrics written in Hindi, but in the English alphabet, if that makes any sense, because obviously Hindi has its own alphabet. And whenever I would, show off how I learned this new song, he would get so excited. And the funny thing about Men Tera Boyfriend, I'm going way too personal here. I should have warned that in the beginning, but I didn't know I was going to go this far. The thing about Men Tera Boyfriend is the chorus. It's a duet between a guy and a girl. And the chorus the guy sings in the beginning is Men Tera Boyfriend, tu meri girlfriend, oh menu kendi na 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 na, which means I'm your boyfriend, you're my girlfriend, but you keep telling me no, 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 no. And then by the end, he's basically, so it's like he's declaring that they're in a relationship, and she's like, no, we're not. And then by the end, the girl finally sings back to him, okay, I'm your girlfriend and you're my boyfriend. And it's funny because I didn't know that that's what I was singing to him. And, because this is way too personal, but when we first, for the first few months we were dating, he was saying he didn't know how serious he can get because, his family's all back in India and he just didn't know where he was going to be. And that was, for me, part of the attraction. Like, oh, it's not going to move too fast. That's good. We're moving slow. We're taking it slow. No big deal. And then it was like 10 months later that it felt like Men Tera Boyfriend. Like by the end, he was like, okay, fine. You're my boyfriend. not boyfriend and girlfriend, but it was just, you know, he was singing that part. And wow, that story went on way too long. I don't think I'll cut it, but if there's a weird cut. Okay, now let me tell you some other stuff about temple, I guess. Because as I mentioned, you're gonna see it up in the display at the end when I show it, if I ever get there. So as I mentioned, prashad is an offering to God, and it might be fruit or sweets. So I put up like an apple and a bunch of bananas because those are things I've seen at temple when we've gone as part of prashad. And I use this to be like an incense burner. This is one of Kavi's accessories. And I also put up in the display Kavi's elephant because the thing about, this is an elephant, this is not Ganesh, but the thing about Diwali is there's more to it than what I'm going to say because it's way too much for me to, first of all, fit in my brain and then to try to tell people and give really bad information. But Diwali is also, aside from the part I'm not going to tell about Ram Sita, is it has to do with the god Lakshmi, who is the god of like prosperity and success. And her son in Hindu epics is Ganesh, who I think is a god most West people know because he's the god with an elephant head and 4 arms. So Lakshmi is his adopted, or I mean, his mother, but she adopted him. Way more detail than I need to give. So you'll see a lot of, at least I have seen a lot of, and you'll even see elephants up in my display. So I'm assuming that that's maybe Kavi prays to Ganesh in the story. I haven't read her book, so if she does, if she doesn't, she should. I would assume she would. And another thing that's holy to Hindus is marigold. So here's a marigold that's going to be up in the display as well. And I have one last piece to show before I finally get to the window display. So my partner, when he moved over here, he came over with a group of Indians. He came over on a whim, believe it or not. It was one of his coworkers said he was going to move here, and you know, does anybody else want to start the process with me? And this was about 2018. And these are my stories, so it's probably not nice that I'm telling other people's stories, but I'm just trying to give a little bit of background because when he was here, one of those people eventually became his roommate while we were dating. And when his roommate, who's from Chennai, Tamil Nadu, South India, when he went to visit home, he brought back Shu, my partner, Shu, a set of dolls, which are, so I assumed because he brought this back from Tamil Nadu that these were supposed to be South Indian. But I would imagine now that I know a little bit more that they're actually Gujarati because these are dandiya, the sticks here, and there's a dance called Ras, I think. And this goes, okay, I'm giving you too much background, but there's a story to why I have these. So remember how I said there's diya with the tongue out, and then these are the tongue up. So it's dandiya. So the tongue goes up instead of out when you're saying the duh. And so when he brought these, or when he gave this to Shu, my eyes lit up. I'm like, that's going in my Diwali display. And somehow you're not getting it back. Listen, he doesn't care about dolls. And so I had this plan all along that when he let me put it in my Diwali display, I was going to one day, you know, I was going to put it away with all my Diwali stuff at the end of the season and kind of let him forget about it. And then when I put it out again this year now, but next year, I was just going to tell him, oh, don't you remember when you said I could have that? You said you didn't care about dolls and that it looked so good in my display that you said I could have it. Listen, my partner has a pretty bad memory. So I was like, it's going to be fine. He'll believe me. And then what happened was these dolls came up in conversation sometime in the summer within the last 3 months. And then instead of waiting until Diwali, he was like, oh, where did those dolls go? I'm like, don't you remember you gave them to me? I'm like, you saw them in my display and you thought it looked so good and you don't care about dolls anyway, so you said I could have them. Just put them up in my Diwali display every year. And he's like, oh, okay. Like, you totally forgot about them, didn't you? He's like, yeah. And I was like, yeah. See, it's a good thing you gave them to me. And then a month ago, again, we were talking about dandiya. And he was like, oh, yeah, whatever happened to those dolls that his ex-roommate gave when he visited home? And I was like, you forgot again? So I'm saying, luckily his memory is so bad that I can get away with stealing his dolls. But if let's say things don't work out or whatever, not that that's my plan here or anything, but I'm just saying that's something that I would give back. I wouldn't be that rude. And so now let me put all this over in my window. And I can't remember now because it's been so long that I started recording if I said that I had to move my Halloween dolls out early. I'm pretty sure I mentioned this. So that's why they've been behind me this whole video. And I don't think I mentioned that last year, Diwali fell 2 weeks later. So it's a whole, maybe even 3 weeks earlier than it was last year. I just know that last year I had time to take down my Halloween display after Halloween and then put up Diwali for, I don't know, at least a couple weeks. And then this year, it's overlapped, so I'm going to have two displays going at once. But I mean, I can't have Diwali up after Diwali, so I had to take down Halloween early. I don't know if that makes sense to you, but it makes sense to me. And I think I actually, you know what, I didn't even get out half the embarrassing stories I thought I would, and I took up way more time than I thought I would. Like, who was I kidding? So yeah, that's as good as I'm going to get for this round. And let me, as I said, put everything up in the window display and show you how it goes. All right, so as I said, similarly to my Halloween display, here's my Diwali window. Well, my window that's now decorated for Diwali. And I'll zoom in and show you all the dolls and everything else close up. Here are Logan and Rohan, the mini-me to me and my partner. And since they've been customized a little, I'll show you more of the details of their faces. And these amazing outfits sequin dolls made. I thought this was this was going to be the year I would buy something more for Deepika, my limited edition Jasmine doll. Here's the little cubby hole. And I think because I have an extra pair of shoes now with Logan, it didn't fit as well as it did last year. And this is what I'm considering the actual temple, even though these aren't gods, so it's probably not correct that I'm doing this. But still, there's a prashad. And I need to find a little stick to make that look like actual incense. And I always forget to say when I show my Deepika in this Diwali outfit, she is wearing an outfit that used to cause stains, but American Girl has since corrected whatever they were using. And I've had this outfit on her for months at a time, and she's never gotten stained. So I think it should be fine now. At least the one I have is fine. And here's Darshini, who I didn't mention this time. She's got a Telugu name because she's from AP. Here's Gavi, the Girl of the Year from 2 years ago now, wearing her, what they call the Bollywood, I think they just call it a Bollywood outfit, but Bollywood performance outfit maybe. Anyway, so now it's nice that I'm getting to show off my window displays because this is one of my favorite things about collecting American Girl. All these displays I get to make. So thank you to anyone who joined me for this long oversharing video, and I will see you soon in the next one.